I have a secret for you. This was the very first book I published. I published on Amazon all by myself. Then I published this one. And then I published the first edition of this one. And you know what happened to them? Nothing. They didn't sell. Nothing happened. This one, everyone I give this book to that reads it absolutely loves it. In fact, my neighbor said, you have to write a sequel. You have to tell us what went on before the story. And it's like, I don't know. She's going to have to help me write that one. This is Marta's Jade. And it says, a 9-year-old in prison. How can that be? What really did happen? So this is the story about a child growing up in a home where there is abuse and drugs, but not necessarily how you might be thinking. This child is actually a prodigy. And at 4 years old, she's already paying the bills. She's learning to cook. And a miracle happens in her life. Something unique. I can't give it away. But let me read you just the first part. Chapter 1, An Unusual Day. Today may have started like any other, but this was not just another ordinary day. I have written a lot of life stories for families, for documentaries, for the elite and the ordinary person. This day was not like that. It may have looked the same on the outside, a simple breakfast with the aroma of coffee filling the air, the hurry of kids getting ready for school, the laundry being washed as my wife was muttering under her breath that it was making that noise again, and she was going to find out what it was if it was the last thing she did today. God love her, because I did. Are you ready for this day? She inquired, with a look of sympathy, but also compassion on her face. How could one be ready for a day like today? I answered her honestly. This certainly is not like the typical work I do, I added. I was a writer, but not of stories and such. I recorded, took notes of family members telling their stories to later be turned into life stories that they could do whatever with. Sometimes it was to pass on life stories that had been hidden until the patriarch or matriarch knew life was soon to come to an end for them, and the skeletons in their closets needed to be released. For others, it was to get to the truth of who belonged to whom and which relative did what, and to help get all straightened out before there was no one left to tell the stories. Sometimes this was needed for family disputes that were going to court, but usually it was a way for the elder in the family to pass on the understanding behind the legacy of their family. There were some clients that just wanted to tell about an incident to make sure there was no confusion as to what really happened. Today was like nothing I had ever taken part in before. Today was going to be the life story of a child. How could a child have a life story? A story maybe, but a life story? We were to meet her in a modified interrogation room. Why an interrogation room, and why modified? I did not know. I was assured of my safety and that there was nothing to worry about. That part worried me. What was with this 10-year-old? Why was this child in prison? And why in the world would they want me, someone who took stories of the elderly, to talk with a child? My questions would be answered soon enough. I hugged my wife, told her to quit talking to the washing machine, and she laughed as I gathered my things for work. Things I had prepared the night before, in case I remembered something during the night or early morning that I might have forgotten. Remember, she is only a child, my wife said, standing in the doorway in her bathrobe that covered her sharks chasing fish pajamas and slippers. I finished loading the briefcase in the back seat, closed the door, and looked at my wife. Even at her age, her weight, and in her robe and slippers, I still saw her as a young woman I fell in love with. I smiled, and I would remember. and got in and headed to work. So this, I had no idea where this story was coming from, what it would end up being. But it's got some unique twists in it, something, it's just not a story you'd normally expect. So Marta's Jade, L.S. Kirkpatrick. I am redoing this book. I am redoing 12 Letters from the Attic, which is a hilarious story written from an aunt to a niece. This one was inspired by my friend, and she received a letter from her niece, told this fantastic camping story about a bear and other things. And at the end of it, she goes, I'm just kidding. It's spring break and I'm so bored. So this is just fun stories that were written. Goes over 12 letters over the course of a year, back and forth between the two. This one's going to get redone, but I do still have a few copies. Cara, the puppy and the girl. This one originally had a title, I think it's All of Our Story to Tell. I've redone it, added a little bit more. This is actually my Irish wolfhound that I have. This is my puppy and my granddaughter. My daughter and son-in-law were so gracious to let me be able to put her photo on there. But this is a story about coming of age, growing up, learning life lessons, what goes on. There's a tornado that devastates the community, not just theirs, but the surrounding towns, and how people come together in it. Their story about loss, their story about illnesses. When my kids were growing up, we had a family friend of ours who had a Down syndrome child, and in fact, a couple of families, and they're just the most beautiful children, looking at life in ways that you would never believe. And so I've incorporated that child into this story, and it's just, this was very different than any of the other books I've done, and I really think you'll enjoy it. It's just, I put this as not your typical book about growing up, especially in rural America. Life lessons, some harder than others, and learning to grow up is not easy. Throw in natural disasters, physical limitations, and all the hormones and emotions that go on, and it's a real journey that takes the reader through a lifetime of intertwined lives and choices. So these are 3 great reads. They are getting a little bit redone, maybe getting the covers done. I don't know. I kind of like this one. But you can find them on www.lskirkpatrick.com. And yes, I will personalize them for you, sign them, and give you a little gift to go with them. And I just thank you so much for taking the time to read these, for watching the video, and be sure and find out what happens in Marta's Jade. This one is not for anyone under 16. This is kind of a tough book to read. This one could be, teenagers, anywhere 12 to 16 and older, of course. And this one is just a fun book. It's just, I could say any age, but I would probably say around 12 to 16 would enjoy it the most. I don't know, I enjoy it. But do remember this one is for the older kids, just because there is some violence. It's kind of a mystery crime story. Murder, mystery, crime. So this one I do want to caution you on. It does have the caution tape for a reason. All right, thank you. Have a great day and make it a great life.